All right. Let me cover a couple of topics, right? So we'll be looking at the additional framework. So we looked at the Decathlon yesterday, and we know it is used for regression testing. Okay. And generally, when you have like large projects, waterfall type of projects, where you have the software available, and then you start testing. Then you start testing, and then you start building your automation test after you have a software. Okay, but the Ruby Cucumber, so there is a framework, test automation framework utilizing Ruby Cucumber set of technologies, which you can apply on the agile development techniques. Okay, so the projects, and we will see how different it is, and so forth today. Okay, how the agile process works, and how we can apply the test automation as part of the agile process. All right. Okay, so there are a few things that I will cover as part of it. There are some terminologies like acceptance test-driven development, which is called ATDD. What is test-driven development, and how we can use Ruby Cucumber framework. Okay, so we looked at the definition yesterday about automated software testing. So I'm not going to go in deep, but essentially what we are doing is using the tools, we are trying to simulate what the humans are working. We are trying to automate the same test execution process, right? That's what it is. So it's a simulating real user. Essentially, that's what we are talking about for automated software testing. And as part of that, we do a couple of things, right? We visually identify 90 clicks or input some data. That's what we do 99% of the time. And that's what software will do as well. When you write the automated software test, that's what essentially you guys did, right? You had the manual test case. Now you give the instruction to the software and you automated the manual test case. And we looked at some automation tools like I had a list of automation tools that we covered, right? And Ruby Cucumber was at the top. I mean, Ruby Water Selenium was at the top, right? Now let's talk about what is how we can apply to the agile process. This automation software techniques is a little bit different. Okay, but let's understand some terminologies before we dive into it. So there is a acceptance test-driven development terminology, which is ATDD. Now, what happens in this real agile world? You are sitting with the customer. You are sitting with you meaning whole team, right? It's sitting with the customers. Customer meaning business users. The business analysts are there. You are there as a QA. Developers are sitting there. They are collecting the requirement. So it's kind of like following the ATDD collaborative practice for collecting the requirements, basically upfront. Everybody's sitting with their. So that's what essentially this acceptance test-driven development follows. Everybody needs to be there so that everybody has the same understanding of the requirement. That's essentially that's what it boils down to. Now, as part of that, in the agile world, typically they collect the acceptance criteria. So acceptance criteria are kind of like a way of writing the requirement for user stories. And then business analyst will collect that and it will be documented as part of the user story in the Jira tool or DevOps or whatever tool they are using. And I'll show you an example how they write the acceptance criteria as well. Okay, but essentially that's what it boils down to. It is collected as a group, and then you document the acceptance criteria as part of the ATDD process. But it is done collaboratively. Everybody sitting together on the same table. Okay. So acceptance criteria, think it that way, it's nothing but requirements for the agile projects. Now you will probably come in, you will probably hear some other terminology. Like acceptance test driven development, that's one, but then you will see BDD, behavior driven development, specification by example, agile testing. It is used as part of the ATDD approach. Okay, and I'll show you as we go through the slide. I'll explain you what the BDD is, why it's called BDD, why it's called behavior, what is specification by example, what is agile testing, and so forth. Okay, but those terminologies are used as part of the ATDD process. Okay. All right, let's understand what is acceptance criteria and how they are different than what you document in the waterfall world and so forth. So obviously acceptance criteria are nothing but the requirements specification or specify the requirements a product has to meet or product needs to meet. Obviously requirements has to define before anybody starts development, right? Without that you can't do development. Now the biggest difference here is it focuses on how the functionality will be implemented, not it focuses on what is expected and not how the functionality will be implemented. So it needs to leave out the design details. Now, what I mean by that, it needs to leave out the design details. So typically you will see in the waterfall type of documents, right? They have the screen mockups and they will say user will click here and this needs to happen on that. So those are design details. Because when you actually implement it, those things will be completely changed. What they are saying is you just need to focus on what customer wants in a plain English terminology or in certain, and you need to document in a specific format. It needs to focus on what is expected, not how the functionality will be implemented. Okay, so leave out the design details, basically. That essentially that's what it boils down to. And if you look at the example here, that's the typical format here. Okay, for the acceptance criteria. It should contain an actor, a verb, an observable result. So here, if you look at the examples here, as an administrator, I want to be able to create user accounts so that I can grant users access to the system. So you have actor as an administrator. I want to be able to create user accounts, basically describing the behavior. What actions users are taking and what is the expected outcome, basically. It's not saying, hey, administrator need to log in and go to this user accounts from the user management and then create a user and all those details are left out. It's just saying they need to create a user account so that they can grant access to the system. Similarly, if you have a second user as a dealer, I need to be able to do the loan calculation following whatever calculation so that I can basically calculate the monthly payment for the users. Okay, so that's another requirement. That's the way you can document these things. Okay. Now, what's the benefit of writing this way versus the waterfall way? Where you have waterfall way is more like you are putting parts and pieces together as a puzzle, because some information is here. If it's a 500-page document, then you're gonna be working with different things. But here, complete feature will be documented as part of one user story, right? Or it will have a bunch of acceptance criteria, and team is sitting there. The customer is walking them through how they are seeing the system going to be used and what is expected from the system. So the team understanding on how feature will work from the customer's perspective. So team will understand end to end, basically, from the customer's standpoint. Now, if you guys, if everybody's sitting there, everybody should have the same interpretation of the requirement. So there is no handoffs of the documents like you guys are getting from BA, and then you have feedback, you are giving it back. That goes away. Okay, so everybody gets a clarification right there. And limiting the developers to adding the functionality that user requires. So if the criteria says, as an administrator, I want to be able to create user accounts. So it doesn't say you need to implement as part of the story, They are not saying, hey, dealer also needs to be able to do something as a create user accounts or somebody else. So they will implement this functionality only as part of the story. Now they may have a different story that will say our rep needs to create this many user accounts or some type of the type, but that would be a different story. Okay, so it limits the developers to adding only functionality that user story requires. Okay, so the scope is narrow. The scope of the implementation becomes narrow based on what is defined in the acceptance criteria. Okay, and as you have seen, right, user stories are small in the agile world because you need to implement in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So the scope has to be narrow for what you are going to deliver. And this will allow them to do that, those things. Any question on the acceptance criteria? I think it's a requirements, right? As you understand, this is requirement, and the format basically tells them how you should be writing the requirement in the agile world or the ATDD world. Okay. Now you are sitting there with the customer. So your job is to come up with the acceptance test. Okay. So acceptance test represents some expected result, right? You have some okay. So acceptance test, right? It is nothing but represents some expected result from the system, or it basically says talks about how the system should behave based on it basically talks about how the system should behave and how it should function. Now, you are right. So business analyst will document acceptance criteria. Your focus is on the creating the acceptance test right there, sitting with the customer and getting their feedback. Okay, so you need to write the acceptance test in certain format, which is this format, given, when, then. That is the format that you will be writing your acceptance test. Now, how different this is than the test cases and scenarios that you are writing? It's completely different, right? Format wise. So let's see how, but both coexist. It's not that you're gonna be writing only in this format and the test cases goes away. No, you will write this upfront from the customer standpoint, how they are planning to test the system, basically get their feedback. This is so that they are on the same page. Okay, if I given I am an administrator, when I log in and when I create a user, then I can the user can log in and do certain things. You are writing from customer standpoint, this acceptance test. Okay, so they are a little bit different format than the test cases and test scenarios that you're gonna be writing. But you will be working on both, not just one or another. Okay, but so this is as part of the requirements collection. Your focus is on writing acceptance tests as well, and you will get the approval from the users, basically. Okay. Any question on acceptance tests? Okay, let's see some example. Okay. Oh, here. So you will also utilize, so for in case of loan calculator, right? So you might provide some test data just to make sure whatever you understood as part of the acceptance test or acceptance criteria. So loan calculator says it needs to be, I need to be able to calculate loan payment based on certain things, right? Let's say that's your criteria. Now here, when you are writing the acceptance test, you need to provide specific example. So you ask customer, does it mean that given I am logged in as a dealer or whoever user, when I input 1,000, then I shall see 30, right? So that is kind of like that. Those how you might have to use some example or test data as part of writing the acceptance test. Okay. And then user will say, yeah, it makes sense to me. This is the expectation based on the calculation provided, and so forth. Okay. So these are some of the examples of the acceptance test, right? Given I am admin user, when I create account, then user should receive the confirmation. So that's kind of like a one. Bing search, given I am on the Bing search page, when I enter search criteria and I search, then I shall see matching results. Now, do you guys find the difference here? What you are writing in test cases versus here? This is more abstract. And it focuses on business domain or how business plan to use the system. So think of it more the UAT type of test cases. Because business doesn't care about the details where when I go and click on something, it needs to happen. They are focused on when I log in and when I go to the loan calculator, I shall be able to calculate certain things. That's what this acceptance criteria is. Acceptance test are. It leaves out the design detail. It's not saying even when I click on something, then I'm expecting that. Because there is no design yet. You are sitting there with the customer, you don't have a design, you don't have anything. All you have is acceptance criteria, which are nothing but requirements. So you're writing your test cases from the user standpoint. Okay, so that's the important part here about business domain and not about software design. There is no design here. It shouldn't include any design details. No clicks, no data entry, nothing. Now you might provide test data. As I said in the example, you might say, given I'm on Bing search page, when I enter search criteria as Intellix software, then I shall see Intellix software in the search result. Something like this. You can provide test data. Okay, but it's nothing else. How I search it doesn't matter. I need to be able to search. That's what the functionality is. Okay. Obviously, as I said, Agile is part of the ATDD process. That's where you're gonna apply this Ruby Cucumber frameworks and so forth. I think we already reviewed this, so I'm not gonna go over this part again, unless you guys have a specific question on this one. But what happens is like you start out with a sprint planning meeting, you create a sprint backlog, meaning you pull the stories that you want to work in, right? And you identify the work as part of the sprint planning, right? And this is where you are sitting with the customer. Sprint planning meeting, your customer is also there. So you are writing the acceptance test right up front. And the acceptance criteria are being defined as well here, refined, not defined, but refined as well. Okay. So after that, everybody will start working through it once they are part of the sprint backlog. Okay. So your acceptance test and acceptance criteria both needs to be defined on day one. It's not like you come out of the meeting on Monday and then you will write it separately and you will go back. It needs to be defined upfront. Okay, and you will get the approval upfront for acceptance test. Now there is a reason for it. Because once you take the approval on Monday, then you have to start coding, building other parts for the automation test. Because your goal is to automate what your acceptance test you have defined. Can I show you an example how you can automate whatever you wrote in plain English, starting with given when then. That's the difference here. You are writing the test before you have a software, and then you will start automating that as the software is being built. Okay, and that's the process. It's a very different process than what you are building for regression testing, because you need a working software for regression. Here you don't. Okay. I think this terminologies I'm not going to go over again, but you have the user stories, you have tasks we covered earlier. Features are nothing but some business function or attributed software product system. It's nothing but grouping of user stories as a high level. And then Epic is a very large user story. So like managed dealers, managed lenders, and so forth. But feature is kind of like you break down Epic into features and you have features into user stories. I think both software we saw, we have user stories and Epic, but you don't have feature to define. Okay. But there are some software that supports feature as well. It's like a logical grouping of the stories. Okay, so the concept here is, are we supposed to build the test before even we build it, right? Software. That's the different mindset from this TDD, BDD, ATDD, which fits into ATDD process. So TDD is test-driven development. Okay, test-driven development. It's not saying test it after development. It says test-driven development, acceptance test-driven development, right? ATDD. BDD is a behavior-driven development. So whatever given when then you are writing, you are defining the acceptance test, but it's part of the BDD framework. It's a behavior of the software. You are defining upfront, this is how it should behave. Now, we don't have software yet, but I'm expecting this is how all the tests should pass, whatever I wrote upfront. And as the software is being built, and when you start running automation, it will fail initially because there is no software. But once the software is built, I'm expecting all the tests to be passed at that point. Okay, so that's the concept here. You write the test first, and then as after the software is built, you are expecting all the tests should pass, otherwise software has a defect. Because that's what is approved by the customers. Okay. So I'm going to go over how the developers do it. Now, TDD is done by the developers. When they are developing the software, they follow TDD process, and it's been around since early 2000s. Okay. That's the process they typically follow. So it's a method of software development in which unit testing is repeatedly done on a source code. So what they do is they write the unit tests upfront. Before they write any programming code, they will write the unit tests in the code, and then they will start building the software functionality. And they are expecting unit tests to pass as they build the software. Okay, that's again essentially the concept here. So they will add a test. Okay, then they will see that that test failed. It's anti-clockwise right here. Then they will write some code, and if the code is good, then they're expecting to pass the test, which is green. If they change anything, then they will refactor the test as well as the code, basically. Okay, but that's the process they follow. And the developers use a C unit, J unit, VB unit, N unit, those type of test framework. TDD is not done by QAs, so you don't have to worry about TDD, but you worry about BDD, which is a behavior-driven development. Okay, as part of the ATDD process. Okay, so BDD, this is where you come in the agile world, and Ruby Cucumber automation, test automation. Our goal is to automate, right? So you write this test first, given when then, right? Those are acceptance tests. Now, so when you write those tests, obviously it's focused on what the system should do rather than perspective of the developer, right? Basically, it's not about software design. We all know it. It needs to focus on the customer's viewpoint and functionality, which is essentially called behavioral aspect of the system. How the system should behave when I write this test, what should happen. Now Now there are certain BDD tools here, right? They have mentioned Cucumber, RSpec. These are technologies that supports the behavior-driven development automation, test automation. Okay. And Cucumber is a part of it, right? So that's where the Cucumber comes in. It's a BDD tool. And I'll show you a little bit later how it works, but you write the acceptance test, basically given when then, in the English, right? That's a plain English. But then Cucumber tool will interpret that test and start triggering the automation code. Okay, so that's a little bit different here. Any question on the BDD? Okay. Now, so let's talk about Cucumber. Okay, so what Cucumber is, and so this is part of the BDD framework, right? We all know it. So let's dive a little bit into the Cucumber and see how we can use Cucumber to drive the automation side of things. Okay. So Cucumber, again, it's a command line tool. So you have to install it on your machine, and then you run it on the command line. Now, command line meaning if you do CMD, it's a DOS prompt, right? If you I don't know if they use anything, but it's a DOS prompt. That's what it is. But the important part is it allows the automation of functional validation in easily readable and understandable format. So when we write given when then, it's a plain English. We are not using any specific things, right? It's a plain English, and it's a readable and understandable format. Anybody who can read it, they can see what you mean by that, right? But the tool will interpret whatever you wrote, and then it will start automating. Okay. Now, Cucumber, the good part about Cucumber is it works with variety of tools. So like Cucumber can work with Selenium or Water or Capybara or any other web drivers. I'll show you what the web drivers are. What does it mean when you say Selenium or Water? A little bit, few slides down. Okay. But when you run your command line tool, Cucumber, it will read that file, read your specification from the plain text called features. So there are certain key words here. Okay, I'm just gonna explain you quickly. So whatever given when then scenarios you are writing, you are creating, you will open a notepad and you will start typing given when then statements. Okay. And you have to store it as a feature file. So you will, when you say save as in the notepad, you will say dealer search dot feature. Let's say you have dealer search given when then criteria. Then you will save it in the text file called dealer search dot feature. Okay. Now there are additional things that you can include in that file, which is called scenarios. So you have test scenarios, right? So similarly, in your file, you might have multiple given when then statements, multiple scenarios. So one given when then combination, it defines a one scenario. So if you think about a loan calculator, for loan calculator feature, if you are testing, how many scenarios you could have? You could have positive scenarios, negative scenarios, you could have different things. So you might have multiple given when then statements. So those are nothing but scenarios that you have, right? So examine them for scenarios to test and run the scenarios against your system. So when you actually write the automation code, for every scenario, it will simulate real user. And then trigger the browser data input, whatever it needs to do, open the browser, go to Airflow, whatever logic that you build in the code. Okay. Now, obviously, given when then are considered steps. Those are equivalent to your steps. Given I am on Airflow homepage. Okay, so that is considered one step. You need to go, you have to write the programming logic to go on the Airflow homepage. When I log in as a dealer, so you need to trigger the code to basically go to the perform that action. Okay, but they are considered steps. Given when then are individual steps, 3 different steps if you have that. Okay. So Cucumber can interpret this type of statements and then start automating your test. Okay, so that's how the Cucumber works. Now, in order for Cucumber to interpret given when there statements, you can't just write it given when then, right? It needs to follow certain rules, which is called Gherkin. So even though there are only a few commands, but you need to write it certain way. So the tool can interpret, and those rules are called Gherkin rules. Okay. Any question on this one? So there is a lot of terminologies here, but the important part is feature files. You need to have your feature file creator where you're going to write your scenarios. Scenarios are nothing but set of given when then, right? And then steps are nothing but individual given when then statements. Those are considered steps. And when you follow the rules for writing given when then statements, which is called Gherkin, basically. So Cucumber supports Gherkin set of rules from that standpoint. Okay. All right, if no question, let me move on. Okay, so what's included in the rules? What are the keywords that is being supported in the Gherkin syntax? So as I said, you have to write, even if you are writing in Notepad, you write it in certain ways. Okay, you have to use certain keywords, and these are the only keywords that are allowed. Okay, as part of your test or acceptance test. So first keyword is a feature keyword. So it talks about a feature keyword is nothing but your requirement or what acceptance criteria you are testing. That's all it says. But your file must include feature keyword at the top. After that, you can have this additional keywords, but scenario keyword is very important. And I'll show you one example how you can write it in a file. And then you have given when then. Now given is more like a precondition. So given I am on Rflow homepage, so I need to be on Rflow homepage before I can execute my other steps. So that's more of a precondition. When you say when, logically when I access loan calculator and I input loan amount and I do search out and I calculate something like that, those are your steps. Now you don't have design details. I'm not saying how I'm going to get there. No, I'm expecting the system will have some way to get to the loan calculator, and then some way to input some amount and calculation, triggering the calculation. That's all I'm saying here. Okay, and then finally, what is your expected output? What are you verifying? If I enter 1,000, then I'm expecting 30. So then I shall see 30 as a monthly loan payment, something like that. It's written in plain English. Okay, there is no other format for writing the steps. This is how you should be writing. Now end but start. So these are keywords. So when I can have multiple given statements, multiple preconditions, which is perfectly fine. So given I am on Rflow homepage, given I am logged in as a dealer, whatever you need to do, then I can do my steps. You can apply those end, but, start, all those different combinations. Okay. Then finally, this examples keyword. If you have multiple data values, so examples and the scenario outline, they go together. If you have examples, then you need to have a scenario outline. Okay. So if you want to supply in the loan calculator multiple values, so if I input 1,000, then I should expect 30. If I do 2,000, I should get 60. You can write it in the examples format. So you write the scenario once, acceptance test once, you supply different values right at the bottom of that. Okay. So let me show you how you can write it here quickly. Okay, so I'm just opening the notepad here, right? Generally, you can, there are tools where you can start automating. like a RubyMine and a lot of tools like Eclipse. Those are development IDEs where you can do the automation, but I'm just using this notepad here. So if we are talking about, let's say we have acceptance criteria. As a super user, I shall be able to log in to Airflow so that I can access super user functionality. Okay, this is my acceptance criteria given. Now, how would I create my acceptance test? This is where your requirement. Think of it as your requirement. This is how you will get the format. Now, how would you test it? You need to think it through, right? So obviously, I need to have a feature keyword, right? So this is my requirement. Let's say I'm commenting out this line in the feature file. So my feature file needs to include feature keyword, and which could say what functionality you are testing, kind of like whatever you want to say, super user login functionality. Okay, functionality or whatever. Now I have scenario. I need to define scenario. Again, this is a standard way of writing so that tool can interpret. So you have feature keyword with the what's the column there, then scenario keyword. These are keywords supported by Gherkin, so the tool can interpret. Okay, so now I have scenario, and you can say that super user login with the valid credential. Okay, you can have second scenario, super user login with invalid credential. Okay, so now I have two scenarios that supports this functionality, right? Okay, now if I have to write it in given when there format, what would I write here? If you are a tester, if you are a QA, how would you think it in the given when then format? So I will be as a precondition. What is my precondition here? Okay, given I am on Airflow homepage, right? Then what is the next step would be? When? Now don't take it that way, what credentials you are supplying. Now you have to put it in plain English. And you can say simply as when I log in as super user,
I should be able to.
then I shall be able to access my functionality. Okay, as simple as that. Your English might be different than other person, which is perfectly fine. Somebody will write something else. Somebody will say super user functionality. Who cares? It doesn't really matter. But main thing is, are we writing the test in the plain English, which is user readable and simple format? Okay. Now, if I have a negative scenario here, how would I do it? Invalid credential scenario. Again, given I am on Airflow homepage, when I log in with invalid credential, right? It's a very straightforward, right?
Then system should display an error message.
Again, error is a design thing, right? So where I shall not be able to log in.
Log in.
Okay. You might say log into Airflow or whatever. I shall not be able to log in. Essentially, that's what we are trying to say. So it's very straightforward. It's from the user standpoint. You are writing this test and sitting with the customer and saying, hey, is it what you are thinking for the testing wise? And they will say, yeah, this makes sense to me. This is if I'm from the user standpoint. Okay. And then finally, if you want Cucumber to interpret this file, then I'll say save as, and I'll say super user basically dot feature. Okay, dot feature, and I'll save it. And my Cucumber file is ready at that point. Okay. Now we will utilize the suite. I will show you example in how we can actually write it in the tool, so that we can write the automation next steps for the automation. Okay. But this is what the Gherkin is all about. this is what given when then different scenarios and so forth. Okay. Okay, so everybody is good. Now, what the background is, right? So background is nothing but like if you have multiple scenarios, and every time you are logging into, let me flip it here. So we have two scenarios here, right? So if I have to apply background, so what I would do is I will define a background here. I am on Rflow homepage. Okay. And then I will get rid of this given statement. Okay. So I'll get rid of this statement. So what this tool will do when it starts reading interpreting your scenarios, it will apply whatever is you have defined in the background before it runs any scenario. So it's more of a reusability. So if you have 10 different scenarios that has the same precondition, you can just simply define in the background and it will automatically be applied with every scenario. That's all the background is. Okay. I think there was a scenario outline. There was another example, right? So scenario outline. Okay. Again, it has just some placeholders. So as I said, it works with the examples. Okay. So examples you will define like this. Now you will write your scenario. When I log in as a super user, just for example, with some credentials. Let me just put the username, password, for example. Okay. So now I'm defining some placeholders. Okay. In examples, I can actually say something like username, password. Okay, and I'll say S training. So you have to write it in certain format. Training, G training, whatever, HP, maybe which is another admin login. Let's say you have 3 admin logins, and so forth. So when you run the scenario, it will rerun multiple times. It will run the scenario multiple times. Okay, it will replace the placeholder values with whatever value that's used from the row 1 in the examples. And it will run the scenario once. Second time, if you have 50 values, it will run 50 times. Just like what we did in Catalan yesterday. You have one in-memory data set. You are running the scenario, running your test case maybe 10 times or whatever. Same thing, you can build it in the Cucumber. Now, we are talking about only acceptance tests so far. Okay, there is a lot more happens in the background to automate this, but this is the first step to start building your automation test. Okay, Cucumber, Gherkin scenarios are the first step. Any question on this one?
Can we have scenario outline and scenario in this together?
Yeah. So scenario outline is with one scenario.
Okay.
Then you can have a scenario, which is the second one. In this case, we have 3 different scenarios. 2 scenarios are regular scenarios, and third one uses scenario outline with some data examples.
Okay.
The HP is the kind of a page that I'm done here.
Which one?
What is HP?
Oh, this is a password, actual sample password, login. There is another super user. Yeah, add with some super user login.
Oh, okay.
Because this person has a role of the super user in the Rflow. So there are multiple credentials, right? S training is one set of credential. HP is the second set for super user. I guess I created for my convenience. So I don't want to type too many things. But anyway, so it's just a credential. Okay. But again, here there are 3 scenarios. Essentially, there are 3 scenarios here, right? That you wrote. First one, second one, and third one. These 2 are plain scenarios, nothing special. But this one will be executing twice. Okay, so it will use when this scenario is executed, it will execute twice because you supplied the example data. Okay, for every row, it will execute this scenario. Again, scenarios are independent. So it doesn't, so you open the browser, you perform all the activities, then it will close out the browser. Okay, then it will start executing this scenario. These are independent, still follow the same rules. It has to be independent, all other rules that you define for the test case. Right? I think I saw it in basically did we go over the rules? I think, but you guys understand, right? What I mean by that. So when I go here, the self-explanatory, right? Independent scenarios. They focus on single thing. So you're not going to have two multiple things that you are doing. I'm searching something and then I'm doing some other activity. No, it focuses on search, means search only. If you want to do certain validate something else, then go write a separate scenario. They all are independent scenario.
So you cannot do login, get into Artflow and then you log in as a dealer user and then you.
No, your step, if your scenario is like that, then you have to log out, log back in. Yes, you can do that, but you are focused and you need to keep the end goal in mind. You are not saying, hey, I'm going to test this thing and I'm also going to test other functionality. Those things you have to write separately. But as part of your step, you have to log in, submit credit application and validate the flow. Yes, you have to have those steps here.
So I have to jump in. We have this examples, right?
Mhm.
So it will have all like kind of valid login and password and invalid.
Yes, because what you are testing can the super user with different credentials, can they log in? Is it not hard coded in the system? Because if you are just using super user, how do you know the other guy can log in, other super user?
So we have to list those valid logins and invalid logins as like in examples.
Yeah, no, not the invalid. I'm not saying invalid. This scenario says when I log in as a super user, then I shall access my functionality.
So we have to write another scenario outline for the second scenario. We have a second scenario with an invalid.
No, this is a one scenario that tests invalid credentials. What should happen?
For that, like where the
If you need to, if you don't need to, do you think you're gonna log in with invalid dealer user credential? But that's a whole other story, right? Yeah, but acceptance criteria is focused on super user only.
Yeah, I get it.
Right.
But what about that invalid login scenario? We are not testing it.
No, if you're writing here, you have to automate that.
Then we have to give username, invalid username and password in the list, right? That's what I'm asking. So
You don't have to give anything here. When you automate it, that's where you need those invalid credentials and those things.
We don't need to give example for invalid password.
No, I'm just showing you example here for example scenario. Okay, for this scenario. But thinking of this scenario as a load calculator, right? This may not be a right example for scenario outline. Okay, because why do you want to test multiple super users unless you have a reason? But I think load calculator, yes, you probably want to use something like this. You supply different values and you want to get correct output every time. Okay, but again, this may not be the right scenario outline for this this type of acceptance test, right? But I'm just showing you as an example here, not this example, but as an example. Okay.
So for this scenario, which says super user login with valid credentials, that at this point of time, the system is not even been built.
Yes,
So,
yes.
so there is no valid credential because they haven't defined what the.
I know, but
credentials
no,
are.
you don't know what valid credential is, right? But when you are expecting, hey, when the system will allow you, because you need to have a secure area to log in, right? Because that's what the requirement says based on interpretation. The developers will build something to allow you to enter some credential. Now, is it just a username password? It could be social security number, who we don't know yet, right?
Okay.
But that needs to be defined in some other story, what that will look like. But developers are designing, you are part of it as well. Okay, generally, as a part of Three Amigos meetings, you are also teaching there so that you will have understanding as they are designing the system. So on Monday, you're gonna write the scenarios. Tuesday, you will sit in the design meeting with the developers when they are working on the story. They will sketch out all the screen layouts and everything on a whiteboard. Generally, it happens on the whiteboard. You are sitting here and you are looking at their design. Then if you have a question, you provide the input. Because you have to write or start automating or write detailed test cases. Right. So it's a more collaborative approach in the agile world. Just there is no handoff of documents or no, I don't see you after once you give me story, and no, it's not how it is. Okay? It's a different mindset. So you will know all the details. Okay. Yeah, technically you don't need, it's not necessary, but as an example, I just showed you here. This is how you could write if you have to write it. Okay, but for now, I mean, this tool should be sufficient to test this acceptance criteria. And you will get approval from the user as well, because users are on day one, hey, this is our understanding. Are you okay? And they will say, yeah, this is what it sounds like. This is what I would basically expect from the system. Okay. So this is another example, I guess it's similar to that, right? I think that's what we talked about. Now, Cucumber is generally you will do whether they are automating or not. Okay, most of the companies expect you to write Cucumber scenario, Cucumber type of acceptance test, because most of the companies are following Agile these days, right? So they expect you to write at least Gherkin, basically while you are sitting there, they will say, okay, please come up with the acceptance test. Detailed test case, you will do it maybe day 4, day 5, whenever the system is developers are coding, you might do it as part of it. But this one, they expect you to write upfront. Okay. And that happens for every criteria, acceptance criteria. Okay, so let's see if you guys can write it. Few more. Okay. So I have given you some acceptance criteria here. Let's see what you guys come up with based on your understanding. You can just simply write the scenarios part. You don't have to worry about the feature keyword or anything. Just write the like a given when then type of statements, right? In plain English. See whatever you can just write piece of paper. It is fine. And I'll give you maybe 20 minutes. I think there are at least two scenarios for this one. And if you come up with 1 or 2 scenarios here, which is fine. See how you basically. I think this one you can skip it because it's very similar to the site user we saw it. So let's focus on. So don't do the first one, second one, and third one. Basically, you can write it. I'll leave it on here. This on, so you don't worry about it.
What is scenario exact match and scenario partial match?
So think it. This is a requirement, right? This is the requirement that is given to you. So you need to still use your brain to test it. How would you test it from the user standpoint? Is it exact match? Is it partial match? Because you want to clarify requirement as much as you can upfront. So you will come with different scenarios based on what your understanding is, and then you will say, oh, will it support only exact match? Will it support partial matches and all those things? Because you are asking that in the waterfall world, you are asking after 2 months, once you have the requirements document. Here, you are all asking while the customer is sitting on front of the table and creating your scenarios. Another 5 minutes. Okay. Who's still working on it? Looks like you guys are done on this side. Okay, how about online folks? Anybody, everybody done?
I'm on my last one.
Okay,
I wrote half on paper, one on notepad.
that's fine. Yep, notepad, paper, whatever you want to use. Yep. Okay, couple of minutes then. Yep. Then we can review. Okay, let's see what you guys came up with. All right, so the way we'll do it, if anybody wants to go through what they have, and I'll type it in here, okay? And see what you guys came up with for the scenarios. Okay, anybody want to take a? Okay, go ahead. Yep. All right.
So what I wrote is, given I am a super user on Artloan site,
On our loan,
when I search dealer by dealer name,
dealer name, search dealer.
by dealer name,
Okay,
then I can access the dealer information and modify it
information
and modify.
and modify. Okay. All right. Well, anybody else?
I can share my notepad.
Don't say- just put it, just speak so that I can just type it in.
Just I added a given scenario, where I searched dealer by dealer name, I added in a given.
Okay, so just speak exactly what you have.
Given I'm an Artloan page and able to search And I'm able to search dealer,
Search what?
dealer,
Okay.
then I can search dealer by exact, the dealer's full name.
Anything else?
And okay, no, what, the last one. Then I can modify dealer information.
Okay. Anybody else?
Given super user,
Even I am
given super user is logged into the outbound system and able to access the dealer page.
into our flow,
And able to access the dealer page.
and able to access dealer page.
When super user enters exact dealer name or full name and click search button.
And click search button,
Then super user is able to access dealer information and he can modify it.
then super user
Able
can
to
access dealer information
and able to modify it.
and modify. Okay. All right,
I have,
go ahead, Rohini. What you got?
even I log in as a super user, when I access manage dealer functionality,
When I access manage dealer functionality,
then I shall access dealer user search page,
access dealer,
user
Yes.
search page. When I search dealer by partial name, then I shall see a list of dealers that match the search.
okay, so I just modified some verbiage for you, okay?
Okay.
So again, I'm not gonna say anything is right or wrong because everybody writes differently, right? The only thing I would put is you probably want to leave out the design details, okay? Because clicking the search button is a design. You probably want to maybe restate your statement here, maybe just search, perform search or something like that, right? Now, one thing I didn't see is so there's an exact match and partial match. Did you guys write two scenarios or just okay? Now, remember the specification by example, right? So this scenario needs to include your test data as well. And what is that you are expecting? Okay. So exec name, Chairman as German Toyota. Okay, you can simply say that. And I search it, then I can access German Toyota dealers.
I mentioned it as example at the bottom. Will that work?
No, not at the bottom. That's a different one. Those examples are different, right? But you have to incorporate your data as part of your scenarios.
So I have, when we search the dealer name by exact match or full name or something.
Yeah, then you say exact match, whatever you are searching.
So whether we should include the list, the name is listed. In the
Yeah, you should say that, what are you expecting, right? Your search results needs to be exact.
It should come in when, if we should add it in the when case or in the then case, where it should go.
It doesn't matter. Wherever you are searching, you need to supply the data. When I search by here in this example,
List.
by partial name as GER, there I say a list of dealers matching with GER in the search criteria, in the search list of dealers in the search results, right? List of dealer matching, dealers starting with or that contains whatever, right? It's a partial match. in the search result, right? So this one make it a specification by example. Now you're gonna sit down with customer, hey, if I type in GER, do I see GER, all the dealers? Is it one dealer, 5 dealers? What are you expecting, right? And they will approve your test at that point. This is exact match, they will approve it. Doesn't matter how you write it. Okay, does it make sense? I mean,
Yes. Can I ask you a question?
yes, go ahead. That's why we are here, right?
We are allowed to have multiple vents, right? Like I.
You can have multiple, whatever makes sense, because what the tool will do ultimately, tool will ignore whatever you are writing, anything here. All the given when then tool doesn't care what you write. I could have written my scenario something like this. Remember, there is a star keyword.
Mhm.
I can just write it simply like this. And your scenario, you can still automate your scenario. But is it human? Is it readable for somebody else when they are looking at it? Yeah, I mean, it's doubtful when you are using the stars. Star is one of the keyword for Gherkin. Okay, so you can just write it, or you can just write in all under given. Who cares?
So what does star represent? I mean, it's just like a bullet point?
No, it's just a keyword. It's supported by Gherkin. You can write your all scenarios like this, but it's not human readable. You can't really read those scenarios. I log in as super, I access manager. Now, what does it mean? If you are writing in given when then statement properly, then I can easily read it. What you are trying to say here? That's all it matters. Okay, because star is one of the keyword. Again, you can write it something like this: given here, given when, or you can use end instead of when, and then. It doesn't matter, okay? The tool will interpret everything saved because it ignores all the keywords when it passes through the file. Okay, so what about the next requirement? What do you guys have? Yep, go ahead. Moving on.
I have written down as a background, given I'm on our homepage and about to log in as a landing.
Okay, why did you choose background here?
Because it's 2 different scenario, approve and reject, so I don't want to repeat the same step.
I'm
Alright,
not sure background is a good fit for this.
okay,
Because you are not saying you are supplying different status. So now you are assuming the system will be built where you can supply the status.
okay,
Okay, so that's not what we are focusing, right? You need to focus on the functionality.
okay,
Can I approve or reject?
okay.
But anybody else has it?
I
Yeah, go-
have it.
Okay, all right. We have Jayshree here, so Jayshree, then I'll ask you.
The lender, login is a lender.
You wanna, so read me the exact sentence, what you have.
I am logged in as a lender user,
Given I am logged in
as a lender user.
as a lender user,
When I go inside the.
read the exact sentence
Yeah.
that you wrote.
When he goes inside and the given details, sorry,
Again, properly forward your sentences, okay? Because it needs to be human readable. So you need to have exact statements, what you are
when
exactly.
he goes inside the credit application,
Opens credit application, is that what you mean?
yeah. And then if he sees all his credit application details.
Okay,
And then if everything matches,
okay, so this scenarios, again, you still need to interpret as a QA what you are trying to do here. Are you verifying that are you able to
Yeah, I'm
modify
verifying that.
or not?
I don't have to modify, right? Because the lender cannot.
But that's not what the requirement is here, right? It says I shall be, as a lender, I shall be able to update or reject credit application.
Yeah,
The modification is a different story.
yeah,
That's not what the scope of this story is.
and he sees all the credit, he can see all details is correct and then he goes.
But then now you're mixing two different things. You are saying that, hey, they need, first I'm going to verify and then I'm going to see if he can update the status. But that's not what the scenario talks about, okay? So I think, hold on, let's see if somebody else has the scenario.
I think so.
Let me ask Rohini, since she asked, okay?
Mm.
Go ahead, Rohini.
So the scenario is lender user updating.
Okay, so tell me
credit
what
status.
scenario you have exact wording of the scenario.
Given I am logged in as lender user, when I access credit application functionality, then I shall see list of applications.
Okay,
When I access a credit application,
okay, when I access credit application,
with status pending,
okay, now you are mixing the design, you know, you
no,
are
when,
how the
okay.
system is built, okay? So you don't go that route because you will not have this detail, okay, upfront.
Okay.
Okay, so
I
hold
shall
on.
be able to change the application status.
Yes, I understand, but that statement will make it invalid. Yes,
Okay.
go ahead. Yep, what you have.
When I access credit application, then there is last another word, another line there too.
Yes, I understand, but I'm asking somebody in the class, hang on to what you have, okay?
Given I am on our homepage and will log in as lender with valid credentials.
And log in as lender as valid credentials.
Then I open the pending application and validate.
When I open pending application, okay?
And will validate the application.
And I validate, okay, why are you validating again here? What's the purpose?
I'm checking whether all the information.
Okay,
given is
again, you need to
valid or
stick to
not.
the scope.
Mm.
Right, so there is no validation, because that would be a different requirement, validation part, right? So if you skip that portion, let's see what else you have.
Then I approve or reject.
Okay, so you are verifying you approve or reject, right? Now, again, you still need to break down the requirement. This is acceptance criteria, which are your requirements into the actual scenarios. Are you going to do either approve or reject? Those are two different things. You're not going to be able to do that both, right, at the same time.
Yeah.
So what your scenario is?
I approve the application and the.
Then I approve, I am able to approve credit application. Okay, now pending again, what does it mean? There is no pending.
Can I write, I can access list of lender application assigned to me? When?
So I think one of you guys are assuming you log in and you just gonna do it. Your preconditions are not correct. You need to have some applications assigned to you,
Yeah.
then only you can perform these
Yeah,
activities,
so
right?
when case given as a lender user, I can log, I'm on app loan page and can access lender page with valid credential.
Okay. Just read it first. Let me see before I
Yeah.
type it in.
And I can access list of lender applications assigned to me.
Okay. So again, I don't see a precondition,
Okay.
right? Proper precondition here,
So I have to mention the application number which is assigned to me.
not number, but okay, so let me ask anybody else. Anybody else wrote this scenario?
Should
Online.
mention about
I just
the
looked at the
application?
way, totally understand. I think we have to mention, what is the lender able to do it before we can, write the thing. So what I've written, I don't think it's, but still I just say.
Okay,
So I just wrote that given I am a lender on our loan site, when I
Okay.
update the status of the credit application, I can change it to. approve.
right. So your verification part steps are correct, but I think you guys are missing the precondition, right? So I think that's the only part. So given basically I am basically, what are we trying to say here? Given there are pending applications for lender created, or there are applications assigned to us, basically lender, or to me, you can simply say to me. Basically, who is me? I don't know, but it says a lender, right? Given applications is assigned to me from a dealer. When I log in as a dealer, as a lender, and I access credit application. I don't know how I'm going to access, but I'm going to access. Then I am able to approve credit application. Approve the application. Okay, but you need to have somehow, you need to incorporate somehow the precondition here. Because somebody needs to assign you something, and that's who is that somebody. Maybe it's a dealer, maybe somebody else.
Requirement says I can update the status. Should we use those words or you will approve, like what we have to write? I'm
So
able to
here the
update-
status, I think you get confused because somebody wrote a bad acceptance criteria because it's like that, right?
Yeah.
To change the status or change this, or just simply say I'm able to approve or reject credit application. So there are good BAs, there are bad BAs, right? So that this is what happens in the real life. You basically look at it, clarify it, and they will correct it actually.
Yeah, but I got the acceptance criteria as like whether he can change the status, like. And then he can
Yep,
approve, like
yep.
it has two criteria.
But there are two scenarios here, right?
Yeah.
And reject credit application. Now, if you have a third one, I think generally you have a third one, which is a negative one. And when I access, try to access approved credit application, I am not able to change the status, or I'm not able to reject credit application. So this is a more like a negative scenario that you can have. Yeah, it's a more like a negative scenario. Now, whatever plain English you want to use is fine, but whatever your intent is, I'm not able to change the status. You can just put it there. Same thing you can do with the reject. Or approval, from approve to reject or reject to approve. Again, you still need to go through the scenario tree exercise, the breakdown of whatever acceptance criteria you are given, and then you will come with these things.
Can you write the last one like the way that you would write?
No, everybody writes differently. Okay, so the
How would
intent
you
is,
write?
intent is there is already approved application, already previously approved credit application. In it, when I try to change the status, basically, I'm not able to change it. Not able to reject the credit application.
So can we, give an application is assigned to me from a dealer, can it go to? And is like, can it go to instead of like a given?
Yeah,
I can access credit application that is assigned to me.
yeah, you can just say that simply. Yeah.
You can like, yeah, that's what I.
Now, who assigned this? If you don't know, then that's fine.
Assigned to me by. the-
Yeah, that's fine.
You Not like that, I just.
Yeah.
added-
Yeah, if you don't want to say assigned to me, I given when
Yeah.
given credit application is assigned to me, when I log in and I access credit application.
That are assigned to me
Yeah.
by the dealer,
Yeah,
that's what I've written on the. bank.
which is fine. I mean, our whatever English language you want to use, but your intent needs to be clear.
Okay.
What are you trying to verify, or what is true in the system at that point?
So in every scenario, it's not mandatory to mention that we are on our flow side. Then it's.
No, it doesn't make sense, right? I mean, that one, you assume if you are not on Airflow, you're not able to execute anything.
Okay.
You are thinking from user standpoint. Why, yeah, you don't have to mention.
So here the lender login ID and the credential should be
Yeah.
given, should be mentioned here, or it can be written as an example. Lender
Credential.
login and ID.
No, we are not talking about specific credential here, right?
So
I'm just saying I'm logging in as a lender.
that's it.
Yeah. Now, if you interpret it as a lender user, who cares? It's a lender. Yes, go ahead.
In the last scenario, we used, right, like for the search, a specific lender, specific dealer.
Where? No, that is for testing the functionality, not for the login part.
Okay.
I'm testing it for the functionality. I can create as many user I want. Why would I do that? But here I'm searching the specific things so that user will understand what they are expecting from the system.
Okay. So we provide what's required, just the data, that one, like, but like we don't
Yes.
specify how
Yeah.
we begin.
Right. So these things you don't have mentioned because you don't know. But here I know they will be searching whether Germain or something. And they will say, no, it's not Germain, maybe somebody else, which is fine. It will become part of your test data. Okay, but this is not the important part. How are you logging in? Who cares? Let's see if I have access to the functionality. I perform my activity, then I should see the right results at that point. Yeah, typically you are given when then the given may or may not include any test data, but when and then will include some type of test data. Okay. So that's where most of the action will have.
So I have one question about that lender page, not about this.
Okay.
So in the requirement, we say upload or reject the credit application, but when I on the upfront existing, it has one more tab like funded. So
Yeah, but status is we assume this is this is not the same requirement, right? This is how you will get as an acceptance criteria as part of the story. And they are saying only this part. There is no funded status. There is nothing designed yet. How the system will be built, we don't know unless you sit with the developers in the design sessions. How they plan to implement. Now at that point, then you will start writing your detailed test cases. So your detailed test cases will include all other things, but this is from the user standpoint.
Can I ask you a question here?
Yes.
How would I write the scenario? Like, it seems like I have 3 scenarios here, right?
Yes.
This
Yep.
all goes in one feature, one feature.
Yep, one feature fine. Yep, you will have scenario keyword here just before given. Yep, scenario keyword, scenario, and then this feature file will include feature keyword. Yep, so you will create one file. It will look something similar to this.
So scenario for the first one would be lender user approving application. Is that what the scenario would be?
Well, you can describe what is this scenario. It's a lender user. If that's what you are telling me, lender user approving.
Because it says approve, right?
Approving credit application. You can put some comment. This is how you can add as what the scenario is about. Your test title. Think it that way. Lender approving credit application.
Oh,
Lender, if you put comment, you can put comment like this. Lender rejecting credit application.
Okay.
And here, lender cannot change status after it's approved or after it's approved. That scenario. You will have 4 scenario. Lender cannot change status after it's rejected. Those are your scenario titles. This becomes more like a title for the scenario.
Can we do a data driven with examples for this one? These statuses, right?
No, there is again, you are going back, assuming the status is already there. That's how they are designed. But at this point, you don't have design.
Okay. Thank you.
So there is no status here. All right, so everybody good. Hopefully, conceptually, you and if you are given other things, I think you can write at least some cucumber. It may not be perfect. I mean, there is nothing perfect, right, in this world. So you just need to write it and see how it goes. But But this is the beginning first step for test automation. Okay, once you have it, then let's see what happens next, which I'll cover quickly because it's a technical part. Okay, so let me just go through that quickly, and I think we should be good afterwards. So let me see what happens next once you have. Okay, all right. So once you have it, you will run the Cucumber, which will start executing every scenario, every step, and start automating the process, start triggering the code. Now, coding wise, I mean, that actually, before we go to coding, there are a couple of things that happens. So I think there's a diagram here. Okay. So in the typically, you will build it automation test in some type of programming tool like a RubyMine or Eclipse, right? That's where you will be creating the project. You will be start creating your feature files right within the tool. And then a feature file, obviously feature file includes scenarios and steps, right? That's what we saw here up to this portion. So this is more like a business facing. There is no coding involved. Anybody can write the scenarios, Cucumber test. And this is considered business facing. Okay, you get the approval, and then you start at automating, which is more like a technology facing. So after you hit the steps are there, you need to, the next logical step would be step definition. You will have some support codes, some automation libraries, and finally you will be able to integrate Selenium and those things in this coding wise. Okay, so this is all about code here. So I'll go through very quickly. Okay. So as I said, next logical step would be Ruby code, which is called step definition. So that's the next thing you can create, and you can trigger the Ruby code. This is where the Selenium and other things comes in the picture. Okay, so I'll show you example of the test, how it's built. But this is just a high level understanding what we are doing. So far we are all here. We need to build this part and then this part to actually write the automation test end to end. All right. So step definition is this is the Ruby starting of the Ruby code, okay, which will start triggering the basically programming logic at this point. Okay, so okay, let's see if I have example. Okay, yeah, so this is what it looks like in the Ruby programming. So given I am logged in as admin, if you have this tab, and the Cucumber will use, so this the logic, what all programming logic you write will be executed as part of this step, basically. So implementation of actually Ruby code is written here. I think I should have said Ruby code instead of test, right? And this is your Gherkin scenario, right? Gherkin step. This would be matching step definition. So each step will have its step definition. Okay. Now, since it's a Ruby, again, Ruby is a programming language. Now, Cucumber works with the Java, C#, all other programming language. So you need to pick up at least one programming language if you want to become automation tester on the Ruby Cucumber Selenium framework. Okay. And that takes some time. But Ruby is a programming language, and Ruby and Cucumber works so well. I think you probably heard the Ruby Cucumber terminology. But what goes on is Cucumber is the first, and then Ruby comes in the play. Okay, but it's a programming language, and let's see. So as part of the Ruby Cucumber, you will hear Ruby Cucumber Selenium or Ruby Cucumber Water. Okay, so what the Water is it's another framework or libraries, programming libraries, which will interact with the browser. So open browser, when you are saying issuing that command in your automation test, it will actually open a browser. And then you have to issue a command called go to this website, Airflow. So you write that everything is in the programming here. Okay. But WebDriver is, so Selenium is a WebDriver, Water is a WebDriver. There are a few other WebDrivers there, which can work well with the Ruby Cucumber framework. Okay. Again, they work with the various browsers and so forth. You can read this on your own time. But again, since you don't have programming background, I'm not gonna go in depth here. But let me just see what it looks like. So this is the programming code. Again, it's in the Ruby. This is for triggering a new browser window. So you have to write it something like this to open a browser window. It's not as straightforward as a code automation, codeless automation tool we saw yesterday, like Catalan is very different. Okay, here you have to build everything from scratch. Whatever the groovy scripting I showed you, you are writing actually those type of programming here in the for the Ruby Cucumber using the actual thing. If you want to go to the Google site, that's how you can go to Google site and you specify the URL and so forth. Okay. Let me quickly show you example of a working test. So this is a tool I'm talking about, RubyMine. Okay, RubyMine IDE. Okay, and now, as I said, it's a framework, right? All the framework follows certain programming structure. So you have to learn the programming structure for that. But let me open load calculator one here. So this is my feature file looks like. Feature, I have scenario keyword. Given I am on load calculator, when I enter 1,000 and the calculate loan payment, then I shall see 30 as monthly loan. Okay. If I open the dealer search, even I am logged in as a dealer, as admin user, when I am dealer search, when I search for German dealer, then I shall see German Toyota in the search result. Okay, so these are keywords, right? These are your test data. It is highlighted a little bit differently here. Okay, hopefully you guys can see it, right? Similarly, if I have a login scenario, I could have multiple scenarios in a single file. When I'm logging as admin user, dealer user, I'm just validating simple login using credentials. Okay, so this is the first thing that you will build. Now, as I said, step definitions. So every step will have some matching step definition. So they are written in the Ruby code here. So I'm just going to open one, see if I can find a simple one. So again, this is a Ruby programming code. It's not much. It's very small programming constructs that you have. This is a programming block, but I'm instructing to go visit Airflow, go log in as a particular user, log in and fail unless. This is the verification. What makes it pass or fail? You have to build it yourself in the programming. Okay. For dealer search, you will find something similar. User type as admin, visit dealer search, and so forth. Again, there is a lot more coding involved, right? How you organize the code and so forth. You will have class files, object-oriented programming, and all different kind of stuff. Here we have class file, load calculator, which is inheriting from different class, and then this is the browser interaction part. Okay, so this is where your let me go to the login class. This is how the class file looks, but I'm opening a new browser window. Okay, so I'm opening a new browser window, then I'm going to Airflow URL, and then it's handling multiple users at that point. But then there is a verification step is here. Like I'm checking something is visible or not. Some links are visible on the Airflow. Again, it's a lot more coding, right? And so forth. So I'll stop here and see if you guys have any question or anything. So Cucumber is the one that you can do, but other things you will need Ruby programming. Okay, that's what my intent was to show it here. Any question from anyone? Looks like no question. So let me come back here. If no question, then I think that's all I wanted to cover. Hopefully the Cucumber side of things, at least you guys are clear on that. And you guys can write, so you will have something for homework, so some more tests to write for Cucumber. All right, Dilip, I'll hand it over to you then. Looks like, yeah, take a 5-minute break and we'll come back and we'll cover the one more thing.